It was not as easy as it usually is for him, but regardless, Max Verstappen still won another F1 race. His 50th career win. He won today at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin for the US Grand Prix. He's now won 3 straight, 2021, 2022, and 2023, along with 5 straight in the United States, as he has won both the Miami Grand Prix. He will look to sweep the US in about a month in Vegas, but it ended up being a little bit more entertaining of a race than we thought. Verstappen started 6th, so that helped it, but it was not really super easy for him to get to the lead. It took him about 28 laps before he took the lead for the first time to the halfway point in the race. Lando Norris had competitive speed. Lewis Hamilton had competitive speed. The different altering strategies of when to pit for the 2-stop race. And then there were some guys in the mid-pack that did try to 1-stop race. We'll talk about them in the results. But overall, a more entertaining race than I expected. COTA has really delivered in terms of the racing for F1 the past couple of seasons. It's really always been a great racetrack. But, last season we had Hamilton versus Verstappen. It took down to the last few laps there. 2 years ago, of course, the strategy battle between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton when they were in super almost equal cars in terms of speed, and that late chase of Hamilton down to Verstappen. And then this year, Hamilton once again chasing down Verstappen, but just too little, too late. Just could not get it done. And unfortunately for him, he had to settle for second. But let's go through the results. I'm watching a NASCAR race too. I'm going to get that race recap out. It's actually a red flag, so this is very convenient for me. But yes, let's look at the results of the race. As I said, Max Verstappen, your winner, his 50th career win. No one's surprised to see him win, but had some brake issues late in this race. I don't know if it was the heat. It was hot. It was a hot day in Austin. I don't know what the problem was. We saw some other teams. Aston Martin also had brake issues this weekend, so I don't know if that's just this weekend thing, if that's something to be worried about for the rest of the year. I mean, Red Bull and Max Verstappen got championships locked up, but, just in case. But second place, Lewis Hamilton, really good to see him competitive. Really good to see him actually, not just competing in terms of, for a podium, but actually being competitive for the win. Yes, Verstappen was having some race issues there, as I said, but he was competitive throughout the weekend. Finished second in the sprint, qualified third for the race, was in the top 2-3 most of the race, chasing down Verstappen there at the end. Great to see him competitive. Great to see him and Verstappen fighting for a win. I know they weren't side by side or anything, but Hamilton was chasing down Verstappen there at the end. Hopefully they can bring some more speed the rest of the season, give us a championship fight like 2021 next year. Just minus the toxicity and the controversial calls. Anyways, yes, once again, just really fun to see those two battle it out, even if it's not directly side by side with one another. Lando Norris finishes on the podium yet again on his 100th start. Good race for him. They started second, and once again, just like the last few races at this track, the guy who starts second takes the lead by turn 1. Norris led the first chunk of laps. He led probably 15 in this thing, if I had to guess. But really good day for him. They were competitive. They were actually keeping pace with the Red Bull for a small bit, but just not enough. And, once again, it's hard to beat Max Verstappen in general. It's hard to beat Red Bull in general right now. But the fact that they are once again on the podium, with how bad they started this season, I'm going to talk about this like every video for the rest of the year. With how bad they started this season, to see Norris in third and that be like the slightest disappointment, it's just mind-boggling. I think they passed Aston Martin in the constructor standings because Norris finished on the podium. Lance Stroll finished in the points for Aston Martin, but just barely. McLaren's fourth in the constructors. Aston Martin is fifth. Imagine telling someone that after the first race of the season, after how Aston Martin started and how McLaren started. But Carlos Sainz was trying to chase down his former teammate there at the end. Finishes fourth, solid race for him. Was never really a factor for the podium until those last few laps, but he never had a realistic shot. He just fourth, solid day for him. Fifth place was Sergio Perez, started ninth, made his way up to fifth. Decent day for him. Yes, he made it positions, had a decent race pace, but got to pick up that qualifying pace, but still a good chunk of points for him. And he's still fighting for second in the driver's standings, and that helps a little bit, but he did lose points to Hamilton today. Hamilton within a race of Perez for the driver's standings. 6th place, Charles Leclerc. Ferrari, you have blown me away once again. Leclerc starts this race on pole. Sure, the win might be a little bit out of reach because Max Verstappen is insane. 2nd place or 3rd place. A podium finish should be in the realistic possibility today. 6th. It blows my mind. Leclerc had speed. Yeah, sure, he lost the lead to Norris early on, lost position to Hamilton early on, but he was still in the podium places. And yeah, Max Verstappen got by him, but 4th should have been the worst he finished, if we're being realistic. They tried the one stop. The one stop was probably the worst decision to do this weekend. We'll talk about another guy who was greatly impacted by that later on. Ferrari lost a good chunk of points on that. I'm not saying that Leclerc would have guaranteed finish on the podium. He would not have won. But I think he would have been probably 4th ahead of Sainz, and Sainz would have finished 5th, so they would have gotten a 4-5, and they would have picked up a couple more points in their fight for 2nd with Mercedes and the Constructors. So if they lose by like 2 points, look here. So yeah, they blew that. Leclerc started 6th, or 1st, finished 6th. Verstappen started 6th, finished 1st. Just mind-blowing. Leclerc finished 6th. You would think a podium is realistic. You'd think a top 5 at worst, but they finished 6th. 7th place, George Russell. 7th. He was just kind of there all day. 8th place, Pierre Gasly. Solid day for him. 9th place, Lance Stroll. This is an extremely impressive performance by Lance Stroll. We have been all giving Lance Stroll a ton of crap recently. He's been performing terribly since the end of the summer break. But he started in the pit lane today. He has those new Aston Martin upgrades. And he drove into the points from the pit lane. Very impressive run by Lance Stroll after a terrible start to the weekend for him and Aston Martin. He had brake issues throughout the weekend, didn't get to run all of practice, didn't get to run all of qualifying in the sprint. And here he is in the points. Very impressive from Lance Stroll. 10th place, Yuki Tsunoda. He gets 2 points. He actually got the fastest lap of the race on that final lap. Really impressive run for him and AlphaTauri. 11th place, Alex Albon finished just a second at 1.2 seconds ahead of his teammate Logan Sargent. Sargent, a very impressive day, and was just a second and a half or 1.2 seconds, as I said, off of his teammate because Albon had a penalty due to track limits. But Sargent, a very impressive day, unless some post-race inspection shenanigans happen. He will still be without points in his career, but very impressive from Sargent today. He kept it clean. He was in position for points if something were to happen late there, but both Williams, 11th and 12th. 13th, Nico Hulkenberg. 14th, Valtteri Bottas. Zhou Guanyu finishes 15th. Kevin Magnussen, 16th. Daniel Ricciardo, 17th. Just like Ferrari, they tried the one-stopper with Ricciardo, and I really don't understand it. Ricciardo was keeping pace with Tsunoda. I don't know if he would have beat Tsunoda, but he was right there behind him, running 11th, 12th in that range. And they opted to go for the one-stopper, and he was 12th by the time everything had cycled out. And, of course, with the old hard tires, everyone was passing him, and he fell back to 14th. They decided to pit him for some soft tires with about 8 to go, and that really just set him up for failure. I feel like the one-stop really just screwed him over too, kind of like Leclerc. I didn't understand the decision. I understand maybe wanted to do something different from Yuki, but just in case, one strategy works, one strategy doesn't, you have one there to cover off the other. But the two-stoppers just seemed like the right strategy, and they opted to only do it with one car. And, just in case something happens with Yuki, I don't get why you wouldn't want Daniel Ricciardo to be right there behind him to pick up the pieces in case something happens, whether it's mechanical. Luckily, nothing happened to Yuki. He scored points. Alonso had a floor issue late in this race with about 5 to go. He did not finish, parked it. Piastri and Ocon made first lap contact. No one spun or wrecked, but it was enough damage to take them both out of the race. They were both uncompetitive. So that's your finishing results from the US Grand Prix. Thanks for watching this video. Not as much details I would have liked to go into, but NASCAR is happening. I got to watch the rest of that race. Somehow still under a red flag. Kyle Larson drove it into the barrier, the sand, so they're fixing that up. So thanks again for watching. We got another race at Mexico next week, and next time the F1 is in the U.S., they will be at Las Vegas. Did a track walk there last week, so That's one of my more recent videos. I made a Las Vegas F1 playlist if you want to go check that out. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video for NASCAR here in a bit. And if you're waiting for F1 next week, Mexico.